Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmadu wa nasalli ala Rasul Kareem amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another session of a day in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Last week we were covering the food or types of food that was liked or beloved to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And for those who have not come to the previous sessions, the book that we are currently studying is a book called Ash-Shamail Kubra. It covers different aspects of the blessed and pure life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it focuses upon his habits, his traits, his behavior. And currently we are going through the blessed practices of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as far as eating is concerned. So last week, carrying on from last week, before we start, once again, please renew our intentions. First of all, as with everything in life, we do for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Secondly, we're studying this to gain knowledge of the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so that we can, one, implement it into our day-to-day lives, and two, to gain the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, increase the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in our life, and also to gain his proximity as well. Ameen. So, carrying on from last week, and then we have a chapter, like we mentioned, that last week we're covering different types of meats that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam consumed. Today, the new chapter will be with regards to fruits in general. One narration that we left out, and I feel like it's a very important narration, is regarding onions. Ummul-Mu'mineen Sayyidah Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha reports that the last meal of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam contained onions. This is referring to cooked onions. Sayyidah Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha reports that the last food that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam ate was on a Friday after Jum'ah Salah, and it contained fried onions. Note, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam never ate raw onions or garlic. It was always presented cooked or fried, as it gives off offensive smells when eaten raw. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam strictly forbade entering the masjid after eating raw onions or garlic if one has not rinsed their mouth. Now, this is obviously both for personal hygiene reasons and also for spiritual reasons. One, personal hygiene, again, as I always like to term it as barakati breath. Some people have a bad odor, That's why Islam encourages so much when it comes to personal hygiene. That's why Rasulullah, one of the strongest, consistent, daimi sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the use of the siwak. Even on his deathbed, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was using the siwak as well. And this was the practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left behind, so that we implement into our life, part of personal hygiene. Now, going back to the point of the onions, and as you know, raw onions, is nothing wrong consuming raw onions. It's also proven, apparently, I read somewhere, that it also increases male testosterone as well, natural source. But again, if a person has raw onions, like for example, it's in salad, sometimes you'll have raw garlics as a dressing as well, a part of condiments. There's no harm in consuming it. However, if one does consume it, that we rinse our mouth, clean our mouth, so that the bad odor does not emanate from our mouths. Also, there was mentioned with regards to masjid. Why masjid was mentioned is because in the masajid, the angels also descend. And the angels are very sensitive creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very sensitive natured, and with a very sensitive temperament. So as not to cause them discomfort, we also should not come. And obviously worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with bad odor in our mouths and our clothing, body, it's disrespectful. We won't present ourselves in front of aristocrats or rulers in that manner. So the king of all kings, how dare we stand in his presence in this manner? So be considerate about these things. Also, on that note, we also be careful with other things as well that may emanate bad odor. Like for example, some people have it's natural for them to sweat profusely, and for that reason, sometimes in clothing there'll be bad odor. Or for example, with socks as well. Be very considerate about these things, because at the end of the day, people are doing sujood here. You don't want to cause them any sort of discomfort. And for those who have a habit of smoking, be considerate about these things as well, because the odor on your clothes remains, the bad odor remains in your mouth. So when you're coming to the masjid, many times I see people on the way to the masjid, they're smoking a cigarette, and I tell them, not because they're elderly, I don't want to disrespect them until I just tell them, uncle, maybe after salah if you need to, but not towards, because then you need to rinse your mouth unless he's carrying a mouthwash, to say the least. The odor of the cigarette won't be done away with. So these are things that you would need to be very particular. It's not just the malaika, if also somebody else who is standing shoulder to shoulder, they will find it discomfort as well. So be considerate about these things. Anyway, the next chapter, the sublime example of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam as far as fruits are concerned. Here the first subheading is regarding dates. Ummul Mu'minin Sayyida Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha relates that sometimes a month used to pass and no fire would be lit in the home of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is referring to the fire of the stove. I mentioned this a couple of times in the previous lessons. She says, we used to survive on dates and water. The narration would mention aswadain. Aswad means black, and aswadain is just coupling the term. So it was just an expression, water and date was called aswadain. Although water has no color, it was just an expression that was famously used during that time. So they used to survive on dates and water. How many of us can today survive on dates and water? For us, in the month of Ramadan, dates is just an excuse for us to just break the fast. Some of us don't even do it for the sake of it's sunnah, or is encouraged to break our fast. There's obviously so much nutritional benefits of breaking the fast with the date as well, but we just do it for the sake of we have to, and that's it. But whereas here, this was food. In fact, in certain Arab cultures, even today, they consider dates as a meal. They'll just have a whole load of dates, or sometimes you'll see they have a practice of dates and qahwa, Arabian coffee, and they both go side to side, just like in our British and Asian culture, we have tea and biscuit. For them, it was coffee and dates, and that will suffice for them. And this was this humble lifestyle of Rasulullah. Do you think that Rasulullah couldn't get it? Of course, he could have had an average meal like any other person, but this is the level of zuhud and taqwa that Rasulullah possessed, that he had no interest in the worldly life. For him, like Rasulullah mentions in a hadith, it's a journey from one destination to another. In the case of you and I, from dunya towards akhirah. And just like a traveler travels very lightly, this is what Rasulullah was trying to encourage, that we don't go into a lifestyle of lavish living that creates ignorance within ourselves. So look at how Ummul Mu'mineen Aisha mentioned, whole month going. Today, one meal we don't get right and we start frowning upon the women in our home. And look at Rasulullah, a whole month would pass and there was no complaint. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhuma narrates, I once accompanied Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam to one of the date gardens of Medina Munawwara. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam began picking the fallen dates and ate them. He thereafter asked me why I was not eating, and I informed him that I did not have any desire to eat it. Ibn Sa'ad rahimahullah ta'ala relates that Sayyida Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha said, we used to survive on dates on water. Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam supplicated for the barakah of Makkah Mukarramah, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam supplicated for barakah for the produce of Madinatul Munawwara. Hence, the dates of Madinatul Munawwara will always be blessed. You know the famous dua that is recorded in the Quran where Ibrahim alayhi salam said that may Allah make this place a blessed city, because before that time it was barren, there was no civilization there. But after the dua of that, of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, what happened? The city of Makkatul Mukarramah started establishing. Before that it was known as Bakka, but then it was named as Mecca, and then it started, civilization started coming together and became a complete city. This was as a result of the dua of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. And here the author mentions that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam made dua for the blessing, for Medina Munawwar to be blessed, and that's why it's so populated today. And those of us who go, who have been Umrah or Hajj, they will know that the blessings of the vibes of those two cities is something else. And sometimes you'll find, in fact, I've heard more people say that the feeling in Madinatul Munawwara is a different feeling altogether. They feel more of a comfort and peace and serenity in Madinatul Munawwara as opposed to Makkah. That is not to say that Makkatul Mukarramah isn't, it's one of the holy cities, but it's what they experience there. It's as a result of the dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Next is the mention of the famous Ajwa date. Ummul Mu'mineen Sayyida Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha relates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam loved the Ajwa dates the most. Ajwa dates, they're very small and they're very soft. And in actual fact, we all will agree as well, they're the most tastiest one. It tastes almost like sweets, like very soft in taste. And you can, some of the dates you get tired after eating a few of them, but the Ajwa dates, the texture of it is so nice. You can actually go one after another. And Rasulullah loved the texture of it. Sayyidina Amir ibn Sa'ad radiyallahu ta'ala narrates from his father that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, whoever eats 7 Ajwa dates in the morning will not be harmed by black magic or poison for that day. Whoever eats 7 Ajwa dates in the morning will not be harmed by black magic or poison for that day. This is actually a Sahih narration from Bukhari. This is referring to those particular Ajwa dates as well. They are quite expensive nowadays, mainly because of the popularity of that date. So if one can afford it, try to implement that as well. Ajwa is a specific date that grows in Madinatul Munawwara, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam planted some of these trees himself. The benefits mentioned in the ahadith are specifically for the Ajwa dates of Madinatul Munawwara. One hadith relates that Ajwa is from Jannah. Again, these are some narrations that suggest so. Ummul Mu'minin Sayyida Aisha radiallahu ta'ala relates, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, the residents of a home that has dates will not starve. They could be literally because there's food in the house, but also it could indicate because of the barakah of having dates in the home in the homes as well. Sayyidina Salma radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, the home that does not have dates is like a home that has no food at all. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, before going, this is just a hadith referring that it doesn't mean that there's no food. It's just an expression that encourages that we should always have dates in our homes, because again it was considered as staple food as well in that time. So for the sake of barakah and for the sake of practicing on the sunnah, just keep some dates in our homes. Normally we'll see some houses all year there is no dates, only in the month of Ramadan. Just keep some dates in the house as well for that sake. Next, fruits that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved. These referring to fresh fruits here as well. Ummul Mu'mineen Sayyida Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha narrates that from all fruits, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam loved dates and musk melon the most. From all the fruits, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam loved dates and musk melon the most. Musk melon is what we call nowadays honeydew or cantaloupe melon. So those are the melons that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam liked the most. Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik narrates that dates were once brought to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam began eating them. On that day, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was sitting in a squatting position, and he was leaning against something as he could not keep himself upright due to excessive hunger. Remember that we say normally, in the previous lessons we covered that to lean and eat is against the adab and etiquette of eating. Rasulullah did not encourage it. And also it's the ways of the aristocrats and things like that. But here, why Rasulullah did it? Because of the extreme pangs of hunger, the weakness he was feeling, that his own body could not support him. Look at how Rasulullah suffered. Sayyidina Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that once dates were presented to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam in a tray. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam began eating the ripe ones and left the unripe ones aside. This is obviously because the unripe ones are, the taste has not fully blossomed yet. For that reason, he's leaving them so that they ripen and then the taste can come out properly. Whatever, this is a note here, whatever is offered does not have to be consumed. A person may be selective if the food, etc., is uncooked or raw, and in this case, they're not ripe. Some benefits of dates. Dates for a woman who just gave birth. Imam Abu Ya'la rahimahullah ta'ala reports, the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, give dates to a woman who has given birth. If you cannot give fresh dates, then give her dry dates, because there isn't a more beneficial tree for a woman who has given birth than the date tree. Allah ta'ala kept Maryam radiallahu ta'ala anha beneath the date tree after she had given birth to Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam. One of the reasons why is this mentioned, it is apparently scientifically proven as well that the date consists of so many of the nutritional benefits that a body needs, especially in the case when a person has been deprived of food. Some of you medic students will probably be able to confirm this, that's why one of the reasons of hikmah breaking the fast with dates is because that the benefits, the nutritional benefits within the date, a person consuming or instantly is felt by the person, because those things that the nutritional benefits that have the body's been deprived for hours, it gets that from it. The dates suffice from it. As here as well as mentioned in the Quran, when we see in Surah Maryam, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed Maryam alayhi salam to have the dates, it's again, some ulama also go to the point of saying that even a woman who's in labor pain should also consume dates as well, as it helps to strengthen and give the woman energy. And also some ulama suggest it also eases with the labor pain as well. The commentator, it's also mentioned in the note, dates have excellent nutritional value, and a woman in that state of pregnancy needs to regain energy and strength. Date also cleanses the stomach. Next is a very famous sunnah. A lot of the people don't know about, but it should be implemented. Sayyidina Abu Musa radiyallahu ta'ala relates that a child was born to him, and he took the child to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam named him Ibrahim. He thereafter chewed on a date and placed a piece of it into the infant's mouth. It was a very small piece, not like a big chunk. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam also supplicated, he made a dua for barakah for the child. To place a chewed piece of date in the mouth of a newborn child is a sunnah. This practice is known as tahniq. So what tends to happen nowadays is, in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did it for the children of the Sahaba. Today what we do is, generally the practice is, we go to the pious people in our society, generally the Aimma, the ulama, or sometimes it doesn't even have to be either of the ulama. It could be a pious person within our household, our father, our grandfather, or somebody, a member of the family who is very pious. And the significance is, one, to implement the sunnah that Rasulullah did. Number two is also that through the saliva, blessed remnants of that practice person is also instilled within the newborn child as well. So this is one of the benefits of tahniq, that normally we see what we used to do. We used to see in the madaris when we were studying in Darul Uloom, the graduates would come back to the madrasa, to our beloved asatidha and our teachers, and they used to get a date with them and chew it, and then obviously they used to just keep it in a vacuum pack or something, and then they'd come towards the nearer to the time of pregnancy, and they'd take a little piece, just a little piece, and put it onto the palate of the newborn baby. So then when the baby, when it's on the top of the palate, it suckles on that piece or on the residue of the date, and so that with the hope of the implement of the sunnah, and two, the barakah from the pious person. So we should try to implement this as well. Allama Aini rahimahullah ta'ala writes that this is a type of good omen, that the child should be steadfast on iman, as Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam has likened the date tree to a mu'min. A pious person should perform this rite, and hopefully the child will be upright and pious. Next, Sayyidina Amir ibn Sa'd rahimahullah ta'ala narrates that the following hadith from two sons of Busr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. They said, once Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam came to our home, we spread out a sheet and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam sat on it. While he was in our home, revelation began descending upon him. Wahi. We offered Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam dates and freshly churned cream. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to be very fond of freshly churned cream. Like nowadays we have that habit of strawberries and cream or something like that. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this was recorded, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam possibly dipped it in cream and had it, or probably had the two separately. Here there's a note. One should honor one's guest by making him as comfortable as possible. In the above incident, they spread out a sheet for Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is just like part of the etiquettes of showing hospitality. Milk and dates. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal and Imam Nu'aym rahimahullah ta'ala have narrated a well authenticated hadith that says that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to have milk and dates together, and he would say, these two are pure, wholesome things. These two are pure, wholesome things. Food and dates. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Busr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu narrates, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam came to our home and we offered him dates and food. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam ate both. These again, like I mentioned in the past, that these narrations have been recorded so that we get a proper insight of the lives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like the Sahaba ridwanullahi anhum ajmain, they never left any stone unturned. Everything they recorded so that the coming ummah like you and I can benefit, because obviously we didn't live during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if one of the things you notice, a lot of the narrations were mentioned by Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. One of the wisdoms of this is that, look what we're looking into the eating habits and his domestic life. So this is coming directly from a household member of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Dates and water. Sayyidina Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu ta'ala anhuma narrates that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam once had dates and water at his home, and thereafter said, these are bounties regarding which we will be questioned about in the hereafter. This is an expression that, we should, one, be grateful of all the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also that we should not take it as granted, because Allah will question that all these blessings I give you, how did you utilize it? Dates and muskmelon. You'll find in certain narrations that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam combined two different types of food. We'll explain that, like for example here, dates and muskmelon is mentioned, dates and cucumber is mentioned. This is one of the reasons behind it is certain food has certain effect in our body. Like red meat and all that creates heat in our body. Dry fruits like nuts and dates creates heat in our body. So whereas certain other food cools our body down as well. So what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would do was very particular to balance the temperature of our body and the temperature of our body. To keep a balance, he would have two types of food that would have the opposite effect to counterbalance the temperature in the body. Look how particular Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This was something that was done over 14 centuries ago. And this is something today now people say that, health advice that when we have certain types of food, we should counter with other foods, like when desserts. So sometimes encourage that having fruits to balance our diet as well and things like that. This is the habits, blessed habits of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam over 14 centuries ago. Here, the Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala narrates that he saw Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam eating dates and muskmelon together. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Jafir radiallahu ta'ala narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would eat dates and cucumbers simultaneously. The reason for eating dates and with muskmelon, and in the case in another narration is the cucumbers, was perhaps because the muskmelon lacked sweetness. A more opposite reason is that eating a hot and cold fruit simultaneously maintains the balance of the body. Look, the narrator, the author mentions this here as well. Cucumber and salt. Al-Mu'mineen Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala narrates that when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would eat cucumber, he would eat it with salt. This previous hadith mentioned that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ate dates with cucumbers. However, on certain occasions, he may have eaten cucumbers with salt as well. Another thing mentioned is also watermelon and dates. Again, it's for the same reason, to counterbalance the body's temperature. Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to eat watermelon with fresh dates. The same hadith has been quoted in Sunan Abu Dawud with the addition, we repel the cold of this with the heat of the other, or the heat of this with the coolness of the other. Same narration with this addition. Look how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was very considerate with these things. Previously we mentioned that part of the etiquettes of eating is to sit and eat, and also to drink as well. But we'll find in certain narrations that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the drinking chapter will come in the future, there was certain instances Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stood and drank. Like in the case of drinking Zamzam water, for example. There were certain instances where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stood and ate, but it wasn't a meal. It was like light snacks or something in passing. Like there's a narration comes here, to stand and eat dates or other fruit. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma narrates that once Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam entered the garden of an Ansari companion and began eating dates. He also said that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was walking, and he was walking alongside Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Here the note says, there is a bit of leniency as far as fruits and dates are concerned. A person may walk or stand and eat. It was because of his light snacking, things like that. Here's a couple of interesting narrations. Throwing the date pit away. Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala narrates that once a platter of dates were presented to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was sitting in a squatting position, like I showed you previously in the weeks, how Rasulullah would sit. And this is in those instances where he was outside, where he couldn't sit on the floor properly. So he would sit in that squatting position. And he began taking handful of dates, and he sent these to the homes of his noble wives. Thereafter Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam began eating in a manner that indicated that he had a keen desire to eat. And whilst eating, he was throwing the date of the pits with his left hand. A goat that passed by took one of these pits into its mouth and ate it. Here, there's a reason. One of the reasons why this was mentioned, that often we eat the dates and put it back into the same platter or where it's been served. Again, it goes with other food as well. Like, for example, bones of the food do not put it back into the same plate. Sometimes in certain cultures we have a habit of keeping like a quarter plate. If you don't have a quarter plate, then just put it onto the sufra, ideally if you're sitting on the floor. But a different utensil, not to put it back into the same utensil like Nabi Sallallahu, because again, it's just come from our mouth. Right? We're not Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that our saliva is barakah and things like that. It'll put other people off the put. And Rasulullah Sallallahu here, Rasulullah threw it away with his left hand, and the goat picked it up. So again, that date wasn't going to waste. A goat took it as a food for it and devoured it. Flinging the pit from the back of the thumb. This is some practice of Rasulullah. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Busr radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam once came to his father's home. Dates were presented to him, and whilst eating the dates, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would place the pit between the two fingers, the thumb and the index finger, like this, and he'd fling them away. Like so, the thumb and the index finger, quite possibly he kept it like this and he threw them away. Finally, water was brought. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam drank and then offered the water to the person on his right. As Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was leaving, his father held the reins of his animal and requested him to make dua. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam made the following dua. Allahumma barik lahum fima razaqtahum faghfir lahum warhamhum. This is a famous dua when we eat at a guest's house as a host. Allahumma barik lahum fima razaqtahum faghfir lahum warhamhum. One of the things, again, here we see this practice in our societies as well, that often when we invite, or nowadays you don't see it as much, but as we grew up, because sadly we're living in a society that we're becoming very selfish and isolated. The whole beauty of gregarious character and being host, good hospitality and having guests. These are dying traits now. Nowadays, we see like the men and women today. Someone's knocking. Oh, someone's coming. Or we're coming over, and we get annoyed by this. This is not the character of a mu'min. We see the character of the mu'min in the lives of the Sahaba, where when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say that, "Who will host my guest?" and the Sahaba used to jump, or when their guests used to come to their house, they used to be happy and provide whatever they could, whatever was within the means. Today, sadly, this modern day age where we're becoming more isolated, and we get annoyed when someone comes in our homes. So going back to the point that if we used to, growing up, even in my own house, when we were much younger, my father on his day off, he used to bring in ulama, and in Ramadan, those days were different. Now we have, mashallah, hufaz in our locality. Before we used to bring hufaz from out of town, from the madaris where I studied or other madaris, and they used to stay in Newcastle in the masajid for a month. So different people used to take them in the homes. This was a practice that, the hufaz, a person, the guardian of the Quran, the words of Allah is coming to my house. It's a pious sign of, bringing a guest and a pious person. So I used to bring them in the house to feed them. This is good traits. And then they would request him to make dua. These are sabit from hadith as well. And the life, look, that the guest requested Rasulullah, can you make dua? And that's why you find these duas there. If this was a bid'ah or something, that Rasulullah, these would not be recorded. So even as we go as normal people and guests, we should read these duas, learn these duas. For those of us who want to refer back to this dua, once the YouTube link gets uploaded later on, you can, when it gets shared, you can go refer back to this dua as well. Which means, "O Allah, bless them in that which you have provided for them. Have mercy upon them and forgive them." Just gonna quickly go through a few more narrations. Other things that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam liked was the what is called as jummar, palm pith, which is the sappy sort of residue in the palm tree. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala narrates that he was once sitting with Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and jummar was presented to him. In another narration, Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala narrates that once he went to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam and he found him to eat jummar. It's like part of the palm tree. It was quite soft, textured pot, and Rasulullah used to eat that. Kabath is the fruit of the siwak tree. We won't see it here. Maybe when we go to the Arab lands and find out the siwak trees, you'll see it there. Sayyidina Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu ta'ala says that we were at a place known as Maruz Zahran, picking kabath. When Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us to pick the blackish ones from the tree. So from what I recall, kabath were like small berry-like fruits. And quite possibly why Rasulullah said black ones because they're more riper and more sweeter. From this statement we deduce that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had reared goats, and when we asked him about it, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, every Nabi was a shepherd. Quite possibly because the flock that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would herd, they would probably eat those graze from them as well. The palm pith here, edible tuber growing at the upper end of the date trunk, that's described by the Hansware Arabic to English dictionary. Olive oil. Amir al-Mu'minin Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala relates, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, drink olive oil and apply it to your body as olive oil is from a blessed tree. Drink olive oil and apply it to your body as olive oil is from a blessed tree. You see this custom today, as I mentioned, practices. Certain olive oil is not, especially today because it's all been processed and things like that. In my own experience, the only one that I can rawly stomach on its own was Palestinian olive oil. I find other olive oil, I find a bit difficult for me to have it raw or on its own. But generally the olive oil, as I mentioned, was a practice dipping with bread. Sometimes they would have a dressing on top of hummus with za'atar on top of it, Arabian thyme. But here Rasulullah instructed also put it on our bodies as well. It keeps the skin moisturized, and one of the best benefits with oils is especially with raw oil, pure oil, as opposed to the cosmetics that we're using today. In the early stages of our life, it might be all good for our skin and all that, but because as we age, you'll find that the skin starts wrinkling and all that. Now if you compare our skin to our grandparents' skin, for instance, who didn't use these sort of, I remember my own grandfather, even in his old age, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him, that he used to use mustard oil, probably because in our village it was a practice. But he, in his old age, he never had wrinkles. But if you were to compare him to somebody of his similar age, in the Western world, a person who doesn't use oils and all that, you'll find because of cosmetics and all that, the skins is like quite crinkly and wrinkly. Is because they stuck to natural sources. Here Rasulullah mentions olive oil. Next thing, Sayyidina Abu Zar Ghifari radiallahu ta'ala relates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was given a dish of figs as a gift. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam commanded the companions to eat and said, if I had to say that any fruit was from paradise, I would have said it regarding the fig fruit. It is beneficial in curing piles and certain types of gout. Also a hakims are like herbalist doctors once said to me, fig is also good for male sperm count. And also sometimes we have that issue, some people have illness where they can't hold the urine. It happens seasonally or one-off here and there. So he would say to have figs, it helps with that, with the controlling of the bladder as well. Next things are mentioned in hadith is grapes are mentioned, that once grapes from Taif were presented to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam called me, i.e. Sayyidina Nu'man ibn Bashir, and giving me a bunch of grapes, he said, take this to your mother. I ate all of it before reaching home. After a few days, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam asked me about the grapes and questioned me if I had given it to my mother or not. I told Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that I had not given it. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam jokingly said that I was a deceiver. He said it in jest, like as a joke. Next thing, raisins are also sabit in narrations. Sayyidina Thabit ibn Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that once Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam visited Sayyidina Sa'ad ibn Ubadah radiallahu ta'ala anhu at his home, and raisins were offered to him. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ate them and thereafter made the following dua for the host. أكل طعامكم الأبرار وصلت عليكم الملائكة وأفطر عندكم الصائمون. Such a beautiful dua. You see this dua in different variations as well. Sometimes the ulama in the books combine few duas into one, like the dua we previously heard, and they make into one long dua, so it's easy to memorize and learn and read it. So these duas are come in different variations, which means, may pious people consume your food, may the angels pray for you, and may the fasting people come and break their fast in your home. Such a beautiful look. What does this dua express? That having guests in your home is a blessing, and having to have pious people dine at your home is a blessing, because the pious people are the friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you're hosting a beloved of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's one thing to feed a poor person, it's one thing to help an orphan, and then to one thing to host guests in general, and then pious guests as well. So this is why people hasten when pious people come in, or scholars who come to, people chase. They're not doing it just simply just for the love of that person, but also for the blessing to come in the homes. And look, today, what's the dua that may the fasting people break fast? One of the wisdoms is the duas of a fasting person never gets rejected. So if he comes in your house, the least will say, Wallah, may Allah give you barakah in your home and your food and your livelihood and etc. So these are the reasons, upon this, a certain dad joke comes to mind. I heard this when I was in Dawah in Germany. We were breaking fast, and at the end of the food, we were reading this dua. So one person from Germany, he said a joke, like, do you know how this dua means, like, may the angels. So he said there was once somebody was invited to another person's home for food. So he made this dua, that that may the pious people eat in your home, and may the angels pray for you except for Jibreel alayhi salam. So the host is like, why except for Jibreel? And he said, it's because you didn't give me dessert. It's one of those dad jokes. Obviously it's not a true incident, but it's one of those jokes I just remembered when I came across this. I thought I'd share it with you. Pomegranate. A narration of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhum, and reported in Sahih and Ibn Hibban, relates that a pomegranate was given to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam on the day of Arafah, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam partook of it. He had some of it. Next is dry ginger. And we're going to quickly whiz through these narrations due to the brevity of time, and I also want to move on to the next chapters. Dry ginger. Sayyidina Abu Sayyid al-Khudri radiallahu ta'ala anhu relates to the king of India, that the king of India sent a jar containing dry ginger to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He reports that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam ate some and fed all the Sahaba as well. This hadith recorded in Tirmidhi. Mulberry. Sayyidina Barra ibn Azib radiallahu ta'ala anhuma narrates that he saw Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam eating mulberries from a utensil, very small berries. Quince fruit. Quince fruit, it looks both pear-shaped and it is sort of pear-shaped as well, literally and figuratively speaking. Sayyidina Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that once he brought quince fruit from Taif and offered it to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam ate and commanded others also to eat, saying that it illuminates the heart and relieves chest pain. It illuminates the heart and relieves chest pain. Another dua, again, look, mashallah, one of the benefits of these programs, we're getting to learn duas, masnoon duas. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu relates, when the first fruit of the season was presented to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he would kiss it, hold it against his eyes for a moment, and he would thereafter read this dua. Allahumma kama at'amtana awwalahu fa'at'imna akhirahu. Allahumma kama at'amtana awwalahu fa'at'imna akhirahu. Which means, O Allah, grant us the last of it, just as you have granted us the first of it. Meaning that give us throughout the whole season, bless us with these fruits as well. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that when the first fruit of the season was given to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he would read the following dua, another dua as well. 4 duas today, mashallah. Allahumma kama araytana awwalahu fa'arina akhirahu. Allahumma kama araytana awwalahu fa'arina akhirahu. O Allah, just as you have granted us the first of this fruit, so too grant us the last of it. This again is recorded in Sahih al-Muslim. A narration of Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, which is recorded in Sunnah in Ibn Majah, states that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam often make, after making dua, give the fruit to the smallest child present in the gathering. This was an expression of the compassion and the love that Rasulullah was filled with. You know, Rasulullah would do these things deliberately, so not for show, but again you can say it was for show, so that it was implemented by the companions radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, and so that we would also emulate these practices as well. Munawi rahimahullah writes that it is sunnah to engage in dua at the occasion of witnessing the first fruit of the season, as this is an accepted moment for beseeching Allah Ta'ala. There are 2 sunnahs governing this moment: to make dua and to give the fruit to a small child as well. So this is the chapter. We've come to the end when it comes to food that was consumed by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and also food that was beloved to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us best one. Again, these, if anyone wants to refer back to these duas, once the video will be uploaded on YouTube, we'll share it into the relevant groups. And brothers, please do share it with other groups that you are in as well, so that other brothers and sisters and family members can benefit. Any questions?